I'd like to say it's always a pleasure to follow Christine Graham, and she actually does capture the essence of why I have so many doubts about the bill, because I do believe that it does put pressure on the most vulnerable in society. I'm not persuaded by arguments that because someone is rich and can take themselves off to Switzerland to a clinic and end their lives, that is an argument for assisted dying to become legal in Scotland. And I'd also say to colleagues that the tone of the debate, the respect with which all have presented their views, is indeed a tonic to some of the debates we have in this place. And I'd also say to colleagues who feel that, by, for example, my colleague Jeremy Balfour quoting his religious faith, that somehow there is an aspersion to be cast on those who disagree in relation to their own religious faiths. I think that is not what my colleague said. And I want to pay tribute to Liam MacArthur for the obvious sincerity with which he has progressed the bill to this stage. And I think this afternoon I have heard, one of the finest parliamentary contributions that I have ever heard, and that was from Pam Duncan-Glancy. I think you would really have to have a heart of stone not to have been touched by the compelling arguments that she gave us in her short speech. Because today we're not being asked to make small amendments or tweak a regulation. We're being asked to accept in principle that Scotland should legalise assisted dying, and that principle, once accepted, changes everything. It is not this bill alone that is risky. It is the very concept of legislating for assisted dying that carries with it profound and irreversible dangers. That is the principle that I cannot support, because the risks are not theoretical. They are real, and they fall most heavily, as I have said already, on those who are already the most vulnerable. And I too am grateful to the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee for their excellent report. They warn that this bill could face legal challenge under the European Convention on Human Rights, a challenge not to restrict it, but to expand it, to widen eligibility, to dismantle the very safeguards we are told we can trust. And that's why I thought the intervention that Liam Kerr made was most telling, because he was asking for underpinnings, guarantees about the nature of the safeguarding in the bill. And of course nobody can rightfully give those undertakings, because no matter how precise the drafting, no matter how noble the intentions, this Parliament cannot bind its successors. We cannot bind future interpretations. Once the bill leaves our hands, its meaning and consequences will be shaped by others. And once the law accepts the principle that some lives are no longer worth living, the pressure will begin, not from Parliament necessarily, but through legal precedent and public expectation, to make the law more inclusive and more flexible. And we have seen this elsewhere. In jurisdictions that legalised assisted dying with promises of narrow scope and strict control, eligibility has steadily expanded. From terminal illness to chronic illness, from physical suffering to mental distress. That is the pattern, and Scotland is not immune. Let's be honest about who is most at risk. It is not the articulate campaigner. It's the older person who feels like a burden. The disabled adult who's told their care package is being cut, the patient who sees pressure on staff, on family, on the system and feels guilt rather than hope. That's not dignity. That's desperation. And in such moments, what some call choice starts to look more like coercion. And supporters of the bill will tell us that safeguards can be built in. But what use are safeguards if they are open to legal challenge the day after the bill becomes law? Are we willing to gamble the lives of the most vulnerable among us on protections that could be legally dismantled? Instead of placing our faith in a system that cannot promise safety, let us uphold the one safeguard that is held firm, the current law. It is simple. It is clear. It protects every person equally, regardless of age, illness or income. And rather than spending months trying to amend an unamendable bill, let us turn our energy towards what we can improve, as was so well put by Alex Rowley. Social care, palliative services, mental health support. Let's build a country where no one feels their only option is death. So, Presiding Officer, once the line is crossed, we cannot go back. I heard reference to crossing the Rubicon. I think that is correct. This isn't compassion. It's a risk. Too great, too permanent, too dangerous. So I say to my colleagues, don't risk it. Reject this bill at stage one. Protect the vulnerable. Protect the principle that every life is worth living.